the second of our big day out session, and really pleased to welcome Jamie and Tom from Glasgow University SRC, and they are doing their session, which is building a digital home. Hopefully you saw the little synopsis that we had on the event page in my MSL, but they're going to be covering where they were, what they wanted to change, and where they're heading to now, which I know there's going to be lots of interesting points for you guys to take away with you. Usual housekeeping type stuff. So you've all got your cameras off, which is great. You've all got your mics off, because we will be, well, in fact, we have started recording the session. If during the presentation session you have questions, or you think, oh, I want to know more about that, please pop thoughts, comments, questions into the chat, and then at the end of the session we will do a Q&A. And if you have, if those questions prompt more questions, then we'll open up mics and you can ask the guys directly. So I think that's everything from me. So guys, if you're ready, I'm going to hand over to Jamie and Tom. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Amanda.
I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Everybody can see that. That's all good.
Nice one. Cheers, Tom. Hi everyone, so welcome to our talk. This is Under One Roof, Building a Digital Home with Glasgow Uni SRC. I'm Jamie, I'm the Marketing and Communications Coordinator at the SRC, and I lead the comms team, and this is Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom. I work under Jamie in comms, and then also work doing some IT work for the SRC as well, ad hoc to my comms role.
So Amanda's touched on briefly what we're going to cover in today's session, but essentially what we're going to do is give an overview of our first year on MSL. This time last year we were just getting set up, and we're going to talk about how we've approached some of the challenges of moving from an old system that had limited functionality to MSL, which, as you know, has a great deal of features, and how this has affected our offering and our processes. So to dig into that a wee bit, we're going to look at where we were prior to joining MSL and what were the drivers for change, what we're working on now, including our clubs and societies website training, and moving some of our services under the roof of MSL. And then we'll talk briefly about what's coming next for us. So what are our plans for the future using the site? And then finally, we'll end with any questions and hopefully have a discussion about our approach and how this maybe differs or aligns with yours. And we're really interested to see if we can learn from each other about how all of that works. As Amanda has said, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat during the talk, and we'll come back to those at the end. So yeah, a wee bit about what we do and who we are, just to provide some context as we go through the talk. So if you didn't already know, Glasgow University is a little bit different in that rather than having one student association, we have 4 distinct student bodies. So we have 2 social unions, a sports union, and then there's us, the Students' Representative Council. So these are all independent organisations with their own management structures, and we're based across the campus. So that maybe gives you a wee bit of context as to the ways in which we've approached this. We do many of the same things that a student union does and that you guys all do, but we're not a social union. We don't have a bar or a venue or a nightclub. So some of our key areas of work: representation, it's in our name. We have a council that's made up of 47 elected student members. We run 2 elections annually, and we also oversee and train the class representatives across campus, of which there are 1,200 usually. There's the Advice Centre, which is our flagship service. We provide free, confidential and impartial advice on a range of subjects, everything from academic and typing issues to financial advice, employment rights and more. We then have our clubs and societies, which we'll be talking quite a lot about in this talk today. There are over 300 clubs at Glasgow at any given time, and by affiliating with the SRC, they gain access to support from us, such as grant funding, training, event support, access to university venues, and advice in terms of managing their club, promotion, and more. We also run a volunteering service where we provide opportunities in partnership with community partners in the local area. And in the last year, we had 70 providers and over 800 volunteers. And then finally, our services, we also offer a number of just day-to-day support services for students. So we run an inquiries desk where we offer, help people answer questions. We have a printing. We also oversee the 4 student media groups on campus, which includes the newspaper, radio, television, and magazine. And we run a second-hand bookshop as well. So Tom's now going to talk a wee bit about where we were prior to joining MSL.
Hi, thanks, Jamie. So the SRC's online home for 10 years, over 10 years really, by the time we'd implemented a new site, had been a WordPress site. So while our site was really information rich, we had lots of content online, in particular, for example, our advice centre, information for clubs, and volunteering opportunities on a short list. It really lacked the tools to enable the SRC to really streamline all our processes, such as member engagement processes, and really put all our activities under the one digital roof, as it was all scattered. The events team used a separate ticketing system to promote, manage, and sell tickets for events. The volunteering and employability team used another system called Team Kinetic to engage with opportunity providers as well as student volunteers. And clubs and societies had another system that brought together all the forms and financial processes needed. And our multi-skilled admin team had devised a number of manual processes to support everything else far and in between. Really, we needed to make a move in this, make something more modern, more adaptable. There was 3 key flaws with it. First, we had too many areas to manage well. Everything sort of fit its purpose, didn't fit together. And from this, the second sort of area which we noticed as a real problem was there's no centralized data points. We had student contacts in one system and club contacts in another, and we couldn't centralize this in any sort of streamlined way. And thirdly was a lack of ownership for these student groups. Our site was very static, so our clubs listing was basically just a grid system with the club logo, the name and an email address. There was no way for them to sign up for memberships. There was no way for them to communicate, and no way for them to update their members on what their activities were. And that was really quite significant issues that we noticed. So I'm going to hand this to Jamie. He's going to talk a bit more about the drivers for change.
Yeah, cheers, Tom. So that was where we were, and yeah, when we were looking at moving on to a new platform, there were a number of drivers for change, and I would say that clubs and societies and issues relating to clubs were the main areas that we looked at. So affiliation processes, with over 300 clubs and societies having to re-affiliate with us year on year, we needed a way to reduce the admin workload that was involved in doing so. We had been relying on online forms and for a time even paper forms to manage our affiliation process, and we really needed a way to streamline this and digitize it. Further to that, we were looking for a way that would allow the clubs to store their membership with us centrally, and for club members to be able to sign up for membership online. Previously, the clubs were doing this on a sort of piecemeal basis, and membership was managed by the clubs. We only required a list of 15 members for them to affiliate. So a membership management system was definitely something we were looking at. The event platform side of things, Tom has touched on briefly there. We had a separate platform to our website where we uploaded our events. That included uploading clubs and societies events. And we would like to have had an option for clubs to upload their own events and to give them the tools to do that themselves, again, reducing an admin workload for us. Communications was another key area. So previously, we didn't have a central communication platform that clubs could access. So a lot of the communications work by clubs and societies at Glasgow was all done through social media, which, if you'll have any comms background, you'll be aware can be quite temperamental. And so clubs weren't always reaching their membership. So having some sort of email-based communication platform was important. And then finally, just the point about branding. So in terms of our, from communications point of view, the branding on the old site was quite inconsistent. So we wanted to consolidate it in line with our other materials and just make it clearer who we are and what we do. So those were the key areas that we were looking for prior to joining MSL.
So the next part is, what are we doing now? What are we doing different? So the first thing that Jamie's mentioned was streamlining the clubs and SOCs processes and providing better support. So on this side, we now have, through the system, we'll be able to give clubs access to materials in private pages and things like that, such as the clubs and SOCs handbook we've created and have digitized through the site. And another example being that the students can now list their events, and our admin team can then sort the ticketing out for them. And this has massively improved it because we can give that direct support to that club rather than having third parties back and forth, and not us being able to directly input on their activities and improve it for them. And the affiliation improvements are a real big change that we're making. As Jamie said, it was a real drive internally for a move to a new digital platform, particularly with the old way pre-COVID, with it was physical forms, it was manual registration, and there was no checking on this. So being able to utilize membership lists that are digitized, being able to utilize digital data entry that's all encompassed in the one place. We've been able to collect these membership lists, contact members, meaning no more physical forms, no more scattered files, instead of centralized digital method of affiliation, just easing the process both for the clubs and also for ourselves. On the finance side was a big area that we wanted to look at as well. And while club societies are independent from the SRC, as we affiliate them, they're not directly run by us in that sense. And they can choose to either have their own bank account, or with the new site and the new reporting method, we've been able to offer holding accounts that we can manage, almost acting like the bank, which has only been made accessible by the digital resources available online, and they've been enthusiastically received by student groups. All the information that they need to run their finances is now easily accessible as separate entities from ourselves, which we've been able to implement really well. And support the SRC offers to commit to the committee members, because we can provide these holding accounts, which they can directly get payouts through and see the reports live as they're wanting to generate ones from events, from ticket sales, membership purchasing, and hopefully in future maybe things such as merchandise, which we're trialing through some of our student media groups. And the big thing that we've been able to do, which is great, is the consistency in our branding. We wanted to achieve this to get better awareness and visibility of what the SRC is. We are a non-traditional student union in that sense. So in doing so, by being able to segment our sites to different branding, line that up with their materials and adapt that really rapidly because of the flexibility of the MSL system, we've been able to really line up everything we do so it's clear to students what we do, who we are, and what we can offer from the get-go. One key area, which we've already mentioned, and I'll start in this and Jamie's going to talk a bit more in detail, is our membership system. Our training for the membership system. And what we've done is a two-tier system for clubs access. So every year there's mandatory training for clubs, and that's to do with their affiliation. So mandatory training including lists of members, which we've now been able to streamline. They're now going to provide this to us from the get-go, and we can have that uploaded and have a digital record of it. And this has to be completed by 2 office bearers in that mandatory clubs training, and we're able to soon hopefully look at how we can adapt that better and make it even better with continuing member lists online. But the optional website training which we've implemented is to give that greater access, and it's what we call Tier 2 access to the website. So this is a second part of training which we developed in-house, and that gives students who participate access to the wider club admin tools and allows us to take them through each step of the way and give them the tools to then be able to expand how they actually work with their members and develop their activities. So I'll pass over to Jamie to talk a wee bit more detail of actually what this training encompasses.
Yeah, cheers, Tom. So to go into more detail about the training is basically comprised of a presentation which clubs can sign up to attend. We run, I think, sessions every couple of weeks throughout term time, and the sessions take about 30 to 45 minutes and include instructional videos where we cover each of the key areas within the club's admin panel that we've chosen to give the clubs access to. So that ranges from the simple things like editing their details, adding an image and so on. Also things like managing their membership lists, uploading, accessing that and checking who their members are, uploading events and managing all of that side of things, uploading news articles, resources where we would like to see clubs uploading things like their constitutions and any resources they want to carry on to future committees. We also give some financial training in terms of the club's holding account, which Tom has touched on briefly, where we act as a bank for the societies, which has been taken up quite well so far. And then also on reporting side of things. So we cover each of those step by step with simple instructions, with videos that accompany those. And then following that, we have a sort of question and answer session. And this has been really helpful because when we gather feedback at the end of the sessions, we then use those to shape the future sessions. So any questions that are asked, we try to cover those in future sessions. Once completed, the club members that have attended that session are then given that tier 2 access, which allows them to use these features. And this is followed up by us with a support document, which is basically a document version of the presentation and has links to all of the videos that I've mentioned, as well as simple instructions. So this is something that they can refer back to if they have any issues. It's worth noting that the training only allows this admin access to those who have actually completed it. It's not a train the trainer style system, so we don't allow the club to then go back and train their other club members. We have been quite conservative for now in how we manage this and who we allow access to. Essentially, at the moment, we only want to give access to those who have had the training so that they know how to manage the admin panel. But in future, we may cast the net a wee bit wider and allow others to take part. But for now, this system seems to be working quite well. Yeah, so since implementing the training at the start of the year, we've so far had 87 office bearers attend the website training, and that includes 63 clubs and societies who now have access to the admin panel. It might seem like that's a fairly slow start out of 300 societies, but we're quite pleased so far with the progress, considering that up to this point we've been working on a manual registration basis for our MSL site. We're still going through the somewhat arduous process of getting data implementation sorted with the university. I'm sure many of you have had some troubles there, but yeah, we're hoping for the next academic session we'll have everything in place so that all of the club members will be on the system from day one. And then there's just on that slide there some feedback from clubs. Now, I think this is from the Ballroom Dancing Society, where they've said that it's really improved their ability to upload events. Dealing with the payments has been really convenient, and they've had a positive experience. So that kind of mirrors some of the positive feedback we've had so far.
So thanks, Jamie. Building on a bit further from what we said earlier about integrating other services, we mentioned that we run a number of different services in different areas of our organisation, and we've been able to use different tools from the MSL system in different ways to be able to implement this. One of the ones which you can see here in the bottom left, there's FlatShare. So FlatShare is a service which we used to run. We had it based on a WordPress site, where people could list said submissions for flats, but it was locked in place by the way it was formatted, both in the submission and the viewing side of it. And we couldn't add new things, as I'm sure many people here know, with ever-changing housing laws and regulations, we didn't have that flexibility to adapt this rapidly, and required a lot of input on the back end. So we've been able to rebuild this utilising the news listings in the site, acting as flat listings under the browse section, and we've also been able to utilise the survey function for people to submit them through, and using the redirects and different questions to go to whether it's landlord authorization or whether it's a halls residence, and just really having that flexibility there with a bit of, I don't know if the term's a bit technical, but conditional logic in the surveys, which we didn't really have access to before either. And that's able to be developed and changed and expanded depending on in future is there changes, and we always base this off our advice centre, who are constantly providing us up-to-date feedback on that. As you can see, we sort of say in our events platforms, we've been able to obviously implement events through the MSL, but one of the best things we've been able to do is segment events. Obviously, we said we've got clubs events, they'll be able to list them, but we do have our own events, such as the U of G Welcome in September, and with January Welcome as well. We'll have campaigns throughout the year, and we've been able to segment that as well as segment out workshops as we run multiple ones through our volunteering service, and really being able to define these key areas and allows students to just funnel straight into the area they're finding rather than having to dig through one big event listing. On the volunteering stories, this is something that we've implemented, and that was based on our volunteer page. We've been able to use everything from the image nav to be able to redirect different areas, such as video testimonials and our written ones. And then we've been able to embed videos, so students can not only read and watch testimonials from the students to find out more about volunteering opportunities through us, but also an option, again, using the survey functionality, submit their own experiences so we can help rapidly adapt our volunteering service, which we didn't have before at all, to get this sort of feedback and improve our general service through our digital offerings. And then the extra add-on is our staff pages, which we're currently building up. We didn't have permissions and things like that before that we were able to set, and obviously a lot of it's maybe for committee members and things like that, but what we're using is setting pages to staff only, and we're building our new inquiries database through that, through the forums, and also creating our own internal knowledge base. Because we've done things such as creating the flat share pages, we're looking at making a new historical tours page at the minute and things like that. Some of it's, you know, not necessarily standard, so being able to do that, we can create our own knowledge base. So everything from flat share to uploading a new volunteer story to adding tickets to the event, we can have that all centralized. So staff from anywhere, whether they're working in the office or remotely, will be able to access all this information, which has been great on our internal side as well. So what's coming next? I'll hand over to Jamie.
Cheers, Tom. So that's what we've been working on over the past year. And now we'll briefly chat about what we're thinking about doing next. So up until now, the use of the website by clubs has been entirely optional, and Tom's touched on this briefly, but for next year, we are going to make it a requirement of affiliation that the clubs are going to store their membership on the site centrally. So we'll be changing the mandatory training that we provide to include some basic information about the website, including managing your membership through that. And we just think that that will make the whole system work much smoother for all clubs and their members if they're all on there. And we would only be able to do that with the data sharing enabled. So we look forward to having that implemented. We're also currently right in the middle of the build process for our own MSL Student Link app. We intend to use the app mainly aimed at club and society members, so as well as volunteers, and we want to encourage them to use the app to engage with their club events. So we're going to have a section where they can see, my club events. We want to encourage them to use it at events like the Welcome Fair, where they can, students can sign up for memberships. And we'd like to encourage volunteers to be using the app when they're out and about. So for instance, if they're at a volunteering opportunity, they can log into the app and then record notes directly on there. So it's a sort of on-the-go SRC engagement platform. Further to that, we're also in the early stages of looking at a badge system where we want to introduce an element of gamification into what we do. So the way in which we deal with reward and recognition for clubs and societies. At the moment, we do have an annual awards ceremony. We would like to implement a badge system whereby we recognise clubs for things such as attending a mental health training session or meeting certain criteria within sustainability, and that would earn them a badge which can be attributed to their page and be displayed on their club page. The same for volunteers, and we would like to have a system where these badges can be carried through throughout their time at university. So we're you know, there's a lot that you can do with the MSL platform, and we're looking forward to putting that into place. And that pretty much brings us up to the end of the talk for now. Thanks so much for listening. That's how we've approached setting up our site in our first year on MSL, and we're keen to hear if this differs from your experience, or if there are things that you do differently. We'd love to hear about them. And yeah, we're open to any questions. So I'll hand back over to Amanda now.
Thanks, guys. I thought that was really interesting. There are a couple of things that jumped out at me that I thought, okay, wow, that's really interesting. And one was, and you guys out there probably go, oh yeah, we do something like this. But as a non-techie user of the MSL system, I liked how you're using the news and the surveys for your flat share. I mean, I've heard of lots of different ways of using news and surveys, but that's, for me, that's first for the accommodation side of things, which I know is an absolute minefield for students. And the other thing was your kind of your knowledge base. I think that's a great idea. I mean, I don't know how many other guys, other unions have an internal knowledge base, sitting within their MSL system. But I think that's such a great idea. So, as you're learning how to do things, or you're finding new way of doing things, you don't actually lose that knowledge. If somebody changes role or moves away or whatever it might be, actually that knowledge is there, and because it's in a central place, people can add to it or update it. I think that's great. So we have a question. Andrew, do you want to unmute yourself and talk to the guys directly? Hi, Andrew. I don't know if that's your microphone or somebody else's, but I can hear a lot of rustling, but no talking. Okay, I'll tell you what, I will ask a question. So Andrew said, how do you manage tier 1, tier 2 access for societies on a technical level, as in assigning a different level of access to people?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to take this, Jamie?
On you go, Tom. Cheers.
Yeah, no worries. So what we have is we have it set up as a membership types at the minute for whenever we get the office bearer list in for the tier 1, sort of like, just the entry level registered as office bearers, which obviously doesn't have all the extra options in. And when they've completed the training, what we do is we have a separate tier under we call tier 2 officer, and the group of tier 2. And whenever they've completed that, when they're signing up for the session, we take a record of who's signing up. We've got their email addresses, their accounts, all that area of it, as we do all the ticketing through MSL. So we're able to just pull that information straight away. And then when they've completed it, we've got a full list of who's attended, and we can just do an update on their accounts and add them tier 2 access. So under tier 2, we have certain permissions set, so what they can do for which club. And when we assign it to them, we have it set up that it assigns to whatever club they're a member of in that tier 1 level.
Yeah. So basically, every club has the standard set of office bearer positions: president, vice president, secretary, so on, and that they have basic access. But every club also has a tier 2 slot, which those people can be funneled into.
Thanks. Andrew said that makes sense. Thank you. Guys, anybody else have any other questions? Take advantage of this opportunity to ask away. It'd be great to hear, how other people do, or if you do committee training, if you do it, how do you do it? Do you register the fact that they've taken on this training? Anything like that? It's great to share this sort of knowledge in a situation like this. Anybody else?
Or even for those that don't do training, like how you've found, you know, I think we have been quite conservative in the way we've approached it, and we've been worried about, you know, clubs getting too much access, and which is why we sort of have the checks in place. But I'd be interested to know on the other side of the coin if anyone does just right on you go get stuck in, and if, you know, that might work out.
I think everybody's having a post-lunch lull. Well, what we can do is, guys, if it's okay with you, if people do think of questions, or, you know, maybe want to pick your brains about, you know, that tier level training or tier permissions, you know, maybe we can share your contact details when we send out the recording of the session, which obviously, you know, we will do probably on Thursday. But if nobody else has any other questions, then I think we will say thank you, Jamie and Tom. I really enjoyed that session. I found it really interesting. I hope you guys did too. As I say, if you do think of any other questions after the session, we'll put you in touch with Tom and Jamie, and or you can reach out to us on the usual info@ukmsl.com, and we can put you in touch with these guys. So again, thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining. We hope you found it of interest. Tomorrow we have London Met Students' Union, who will be doing a session on welfare and wellbeing, and how they've really grown their service offering based on feedback from students. And then the final session of these first 2 days will be another MSL user group, and it really will that really will be an opportunity for you guys to ask the MSL team questions, ask each other questions, and really dig out the topics that are of interest to you. Actually, Henry has just said, we make website training compulsory as we are a much smaller team, and so it becomes easier if we leave their page management to the society. I do find the tiers interesting, hadn't thought of such a system. So maybe a learning point there, maybe something you could trial out, Henry. But that's really why we want to do these sessions, give you guys some new things to think about. So if we've benefited one person, then job done. Thank you. Okay, guys, any more? We have plenty of time. Okay, in which case then we'll stop the recording. Thanks again, Jamie, Tom.